I'm here then with Dave Smith, who's the author of a book, Phenomenal Sorcery. And for the Egyptian Magic podcast, we're going to kind of talk about this book and hopefully it might intersect. But anyway, people into the Egyptian Magic podcast are into all sorts of magic and magic in general and anything that facilitates that and gets that going, or helps with the magic or helps make sense of all the magic that we do. But anyway, to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are? Who are you? I say, who are you? And who are you? And what do you, if you like, what do you do? And where do you live? And what's your life?
Sure. Like I said, my name is Dave Smith. I am I bill myself as a jaded Gen X sorcerer. I'm middle-aged, live in the United States, currently in Indiana, getting ready to move out of Indiana, hopefully this year, coming up. I have been practicing magic in various forms since 1985.
God,
I've been through a kind of a pathway that seems kind of standard among chaos magicians that I've talked to. I started out as kind of a generic neo-pagan, Ed Fitch, Scott Cunningham sort of thing. I discovered organized Wicca in '89 and participated in a few groups, ended up being elected head of the little startup group among my group of friends when we formed a grove. Did that for a couple of years. Discovered Asatru through Sayax Wicca. There was a guy who practiced that joined our group, moved to my town for college. Did Asatru for a while. Around turn of the millennium, like many people, I got interested in various aspects of Gnosticism. I grew up reading Philip K. Dick, so learning that he had a lot of Gnostic works. That was an interesting discovery. Kind of fooled around with that, and around 2002, kind of abandoned the spirit model, decided to try going in a new direction. And I had crossed paths with chaos magic in the 90s, but I was, not interested in practicing it. And then in 2001 or 2002, I finally got around to reading Peter Carroll. I was like, okay, this is interesting stuff. This is right up my alley. I am a data engineer by profession. My day job, I've been a programmer. Got my first computer when I was 14 and has been an integral part of my life ever since. In 2004, I started writing. Went to an event in Chicago called Ancient Ways. It was a big gathering, and I was originally going specifically to try to meet Jack Hawkins, because I really enjoy her work, and she was slated to be there but was unable to attend. But met Taylor Elwood and Andrea Vitamis and a lot of folks that I admire, and I was jotting down some ideas that night, the evening of the first night of the event, and that led to the creation of my quantum sorcery essay that I posted. A acquisitions editor had reached out to me, said, hey, we'd love for you to turn this into a book. So I did. And when I went to present it, the publisher was like, oh, sorry, that guy's not with us anymore and we can't use it. Sorry. So I ended up, I was very active in the chaosmagic.com boards at the time, the Tribe of the Fifth Aeon, ran by Dead Jellyfish. And he reached out and said, hey, you've got a book ready to go. I've got a publishing house I'm trying to set up. You want to go with us? So I did. That didn't go super well. He didn't, the endeavor didn't last. And then I was going to self-publish. And this is back in the live journal days. I mentioned it, that I was going to do that. And Taylor Elwood reached out to me and said, hey, I'm now acquisitions editor. We'd love to have your book. So The second edition got put out. Then a couple years later, I started taking an interest in the void as an entity and as an energy source to be worked with. Kind of developed a system around the void. Ended up, that's where my second book came from. But overall, there's always been an interest in information. I'm a big geek for data, from information, and that's always informed my magical practice. And around the turn of the century, so many great movies came out looking at the nature of reality: Existence, The Matrix, 13th Floor, Dark City, and I kind of got I also have a little bit of a pop magic leaning. I've been known to use pop magic egregores when necessary, and that kind of.
Can you explain that as what a pop magic egregore? What's pop magic?
The term was coined by Taylor Elwood, but it's been around for a while. The idea, and Grant Morrison is also very much a proponent of it, that the characters that we create in our comics and our media, they're like our new gods.
Yeah.
And Superman is a modern god. Thor, I've invoked Lex Luthor when I needed a success in a financial transaction before going to meet with my banker, and it was phenomenally successful. Was that due to my magical work, or just luck, or financial savvy? Doesn't matter to me. I reached the result that I wanted, and I'm very much about results-based magic.
Right.
Getting what I need out of it. I mean, I've got great admiration for folks that do high magic work. I've got a lot of friends online that do that kind of magic, and I've read it, I've studied it, but I had a bad brush with Abramelin when I was first starting out. 18 years old, newly minted Wicca, and somebody handed me this book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I shall try some of these things. Very, very, very bad idea. Ended up with some sort of entity that followed me around. It would stand outside of my bedroom window, to the point that my mundane, completely non-magical gamer friends and family members even would be like, "Is there something outside your window?" It's like, yeah, it's a long story. Just ignore it. Got some friends to help get rid of it because I didn't have the chops to do so at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. And that was my first experience of, this works. And it if you don't know what you're doing, it can be dangerous to dabble. So I always encourage people to research well before you start fooling around.
Yeah. Well, there's a new edition of the Abramelin with George Den produced, and he's actually very into Egyptian magic, and he kind of went to Egypt in search of the remnants of because in the Abramelin's book, I don't know if you remember this, that the guy eventually ends up in Egypt looking for this secret monastery, and is then initiated into all of this stuff. Anyway, George Den, who's retranslated the Abramelin thing, he went there. I don't know if he has some interesting adventures in the desert, put it this way. He borrowed a motorbike and went there, but I don't know if he ever found the remnants of the thing. But yeah, okay, so you got rescued from that in the end.
Yeah. And learn my lesson a little bit. Don't evoke without awareness. I mean, there's a saying that I've seen, don't call up anything that you can't put down. And I had not yet, I had not crossed paths with that bit of wisdom that early in my magical career. And I've read similar horror stories from others that were screwing around with things they just didn't know. Yeah.
What would you do now, though? If something like that happened, does that sort of thing happen to you now in your assistance system? Have you got a survival technique?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've developed a my own forms of warding, my own forms of banishment
Yeah.
that work effectively for me. Some of those are in my writing. But I haven't run into anything that I have produced that I could not put down.
Yeah.
I have had cases where I was doing some workings around midsummer, and something showed up interested.
Mm.
It never came into my yard, which is warded, but it hung out just outside the edge, and it was palpable. It was noticeable. And I asked a couple of online friends that are good at astral sensing. I'm good at visualization, but I am poor at astral work. I've been trying to develop a greater skill for that over the years, but it's something that comes hard to me. So I asked a couple of folks, hey, there's something, I posted a screenshot of the Google Street View of where this thing was sitting. I said, as I type, there's something sitting right here. Anybody got an idea what that is? And somebody piped up. It's like, yeah, that looks like a pile of bricks. That it's something urban. It's something that has become interested in what you're doing. It's just there to watch. It wants to know what's going on. And anytime I run into spirit things, I guess I should say, I tend to reach out to others because I'm not a great spirit model guy. I mean, I used to work with the various gods and spirits in my magical work, but now I'm quite materialistic. I'm working in an information model. I don't discount the existence of these kind of entities at all. I mean, I can perceive them.
Mm.
I just don't really seem to enjoy working with them.
Mm. I was gonna pick up that because right at the beginning you said you abandoned the spirit model of magic, presumably. So that's what you're talking about. Or what is the spirit model? The spirit model is literally that, a model of magic in which you have spirits and demons, I suppose, in your system. So that was how you started out, but you don't use that system anymore, is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, my magic is more of a materialistic form. I think that the act of doing magic is an interface between the conscious sapient mind and the universe itself. That you can reach out for help. There are entities out there, some that will help, some will do it cheap, some will do it dear. But you don't have to use those entities to make magic work, in my experience.
Right.
But I don't denigrate that model. I still have a lot of friends that use spirits. I do myself still work with a lot of what I consider synthetic entities, like the egregores from the DKMU. I use them quite a lot. I've got several entities of my own god forms that I've cooked up. That are useful to help as focuses for energy.
Yeah.
But
can you raise so many interesting questions, talking to you. Can you just explain briefly what the DKMU thing is?
Sure.
New thing in magic, is that right?
Oh, it's actually been around for quite some time as it's the Domus Chaotica Marauder Underground. And it started out as a magical group, very largely online. It was founded, there's several founders, different pieces of it were founded over time. Argel and Silence started, then Alyssa Rose and Shio Sarath added on. It's a system of kind of postmodern egregore-based magic. The Ellis sigil, which is quite well known, that's one of the main components of the DKMU system, is tagging areas with the Ellis sigil in order to kind of the idea is the assault on reality, trying to make this mundane reality more amenable to the practice of magic.
Yeah.
And that's what first drew me to the DKMU. You know, I started Ellis tagging in around, God, I guess about 2010. And several years ago on Chelsea Knocked, which is the big holiday in the DKMU. It's the celebration of the anniversary of the manifestation of Doombringer 663, one of the more prevalent egregores in the system. And we celebrate, we do, coordinated, distributed rituals online, post the results. That's one of the things that I like about the DKMU is the idea of, do your research, do your experiments magically, post your results, iterate on those results until you get the result that you want.
Yeah. So what is magic then for you?
Magic is the ability to influence probability and possibility. That's where my idea of something happening at the quantum level is my theory. The idea of superposition, at a moment of decision where something can go right or left, up or down, in or out, all results actually occur. The way that it seems to have occurred to you is as a result of your being in the universe where that state collapsed, such that, the idea is, one of the best examples is hold a pencil, tip down, hold it by the eraser, let it go. Where did it fall? It fell in every possible direction. The one that you observed, that's the definition of the universe in which you find yourself. To me, the idea is that, the many worlds interpretation of parallel universes, that plays a part in my idea of how magic works. You need some result to happen, so you put your will behind that outcome happening. How exactly that happens, I don't know. There's some interface. The universe is essentially a rendering engine for reality. It is continually coming into being and expanding. And the idea is that when you use magic to get what you want, you are maneuvering through all of those forking timelines to get to the destination that has your desire.
Right.
And there's many ways to accomplish that. There's spirit model, there's energy model, there's information model, there's psych model. Frater UD defined all of those models years ago and did a phenomenal job of that. And that's a piece of work that's still, relevant today. And he just expanded on that in a recent essay in a recent book as well. But that's one of the reasons that led me away from the spirit model practice. Is it ended up feeling superfluous. Some people have great success, with that model, but I wasn't getting exactly what I wanted, and it seemed like I was burning a lot of my energy and my focus and my intent in paying homage to these deities that had no longer, at one point, had a real meaning and a real connection, and was less so over time. And that's how I kind of ended up wandering away from that fold and into another.
So what would be the purpose then? You say you're not achieving what you want. So does your magic have because people talk about Gnosticism or in a sense of, or gnosis rather, quite often chaos magicians talk about that. So there's almost like a higher aim. From your point of view, is there an aim for magic, or what is your aim?
I think that there are many. I mean, some people, are looking for knowledge and conversation of their holy guardian angel. Some people are just trying to get good parking spots. It's a yeah, it's a vast continuum. It's making the probabilities roll your way.
Yeah.
I haven't had, everybody tries to influence the lottery,
Yeah.
still haven't had that big hit. I'm sure.
Nobody manages that. There was someone on the internet just now, I won't mention who, but case done, who posted he just won $4 on the national lottery, or four. I thought he said 4 million at first, 4.20 million, but no, it was $4.20.
Oh,
And I don't know if the implication was that was the end result of a magical ritual, but yeah, I know it's a very kind of vexed question. Magicians trying to break the bank at Monte Carlo, or play games with stocks and shares. I don't think it always works out that well.
no, I mean, you've got so many people trying to influence those outcomes.
Yeah.
The analogy that I've used, World Ball, the game where you have that giant 10-foot diameter canvas ball that looks like the Earth, and you get groups of people trying to push it. Well, you're just one person pushing it.
Yeah.
So the better analogy I use for how I try to think of magic and launching a magical working, pushing that intent out, is more like playing billiards.
Yeah.
You've got to understand the rules first. You've got to understand
the laws of physics.
Physics. You've got to understand the friction, the angle. You've got to have the technique from practicing of how to strike the cue so that it goes exactly and hits the ball and knocks it where you want to go. It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
And sensitivity to initial conditions is a big part of that. That's
right. But do you have a sort of a greater aim in your magical work, or is it just part of being part of being just a more effective person, or are you hoping for some sort of revelation, secrets of the universe type thing?
Oh, I mean, that would be a marvelous end, but that's a little bit higher than I usually shoot. I'm just a simple sorcerer.
Well, you use the term sorcery as well. The book that we're going to talk about, the Phenomenal Sorcery, which is the book that you've done for my own company, Mandrake.
Yeah.
Why sorcery then? Sorcery is just a synonym for magic, or is it a special
it's kind of and I've discussed this and written about the difference between high and low magic. Sorcery is low magic. It is, hedge magic. It is the magic that you do to make your life smoother, just to make things go the way you want them to go. I mean, if there's a great revelation of the universe in the offing, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But I generally don't shoot my sights quite that high.
Well, you never know. Well, tell us about the book then, as we got to it. So we got this book, Phenomenal Sorcery. Tell us, because you said you did a previous a book before that, or maybe more than one book before that, on where you this sort of extends some of that work.
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, what's this book about?
Well, Phenomenal Sorcery is a technique or a paradigm of chaos magic based on the assumption that the universe itself is an informational construct. It from bit, the old John Wheeler statement that there's been a lot of media and a lot of speculation about the simulation hypothesis, Bostrom's idea that we are living in a simulation. And a lot of media has taken that and ran with it. The Matrix, 13th Floor. I
must see that one. That's a film, is it?
Yeah. There's actually one of the appendices in Phenomenal Sorcery lists some of the works that were influential to the ideas that kind of underpin it.
Yeah.
But the idea in under the assumption that we are living in a simulation, the question becomes then, can we break or bend the rules of that simulation to our own ends? And my assertion is, yes, you can. And taking it one step farther, it ultimately doesn't matter if we're living in a simulation or not. If we are two biological entities existing in an actual space, conversing with one another, or are we just bit streams that are being led to believe that we are that? It doesn't matter in terms of using magic to work your will to get what you want.
Yeah.
That's the biggest.
Maybe you can. I mean, what's coming to my mind is they say Buddhism or something early on. They had this whole argument about whether the world would, because they're very into languages, and so saying very similar in a way that the world is this linguistic construct, or aspects of it are linguistic, and it doesn't. And eventually, they got to the state where it's not a simulation, but it's some sort of an illusion. It's a projection of consciousness in some way, but you're kind of stuck in it anyway. Maybe would you think that you can't really do very much about it if it is an informational construct? You're saying you can't get rid of that completely. You can't just take a pill and, as in the Matrix, and it all disappears. You can bend the rules a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You can't completely, and until you die, maybe. When you die, maybe that's when it all dissolves. But you can't really change the model, or can you?
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can change it persistently from inside of it, but you can certainly. You can break the rules. You can bend the rules. The tough part is just figuring out to what extent you can do that.
Yeah.
The idea that, and there's a lot of Gnostic underpinnings in that as well, that we are living in the demiurge's world. We are, controlled and observed by the archons. That, to me, very well translates into a digital way of looking at things. Like many, I saw the movie Tron as a little kid.
Yeah.
The idea of getting sucked into the grid, and the first question I had is like, how do I get that? How do I get out of here and get there? Because that was something that I was looking for. I really like the idea of we're all brains in a vat. How do we know that we're not brains in a vat sitting in some laboratory? And if I am, I would just like my handlers to give me a richer nutritional solution. But there's no way of knowing for sure from inside the system what the nature of the system is. And that's I think, as you said, when we die, maybe then we'll know. Maybe we still won't.
Yeah.
The idea of quantum immortality is when you die, you just pop to another universe. There's a lot of anecdotes of people who have, I was driving my car and I looked down at a text, and all of a sudden I was 15 minutes away in a different direction, and I don't know how I got there. And someone will pop up and say, well, that's because you died in that world.
Yeah.
And I had to come up with an idea of how to refer to the subjective self. The term that I use is self of reference, because if there are a large number, or perhaps even an infinite number of parallel universes, then there are an infinite or massively large number of me's as well, and every other person. And so as the self navigates through the timelines, through the potential universes, I just needed a shorthand for, well, how do I keep track of the me that is writing these words, or that is speaking these words, as opposed to all of those other me's that have just as much claim to be me as I do within their own universes.
Yeah.
It can be difficult to come up with a vocabulary without sounding kind of like a nutter, because it's
Well, there's a lot of us around now, but
yeah.
I mean, I noticed. So this is, I suppose we should say this. It comes from this book and your idea. They come from within. Well, I'm not saying we're all nutters or anything, but there's a tradition now, right? The chaos magic thing is, I don't know, it's about 40 years old or more now, is it? Would you say that? Can you tell us what is chaos magic? Then we better get that out of the way.
Yeah. Well, what we now know as chaos magic, from what I've been able to gather, came about as a result of a group of sorcerers meeting in London. Stoke Newington sorcerers, they call themselves. Peter Carroll, Ray Sherwin, Dave Lee. I don't know who all were in that initial group, but Kenneth Grant gathered and released a lot of the materials that the artist and sorcerer Austin Osman Spare had written of. Grant was a patron of his and a friend and his executor, and helped popularize a lot of his ideas, where Spare and Crowley were contemporaries, but Spare didn't have a lot of respect for Crowley's methodology. He didn't like the high magicians. He considered himself a down and dirty gutter sorcerer. That was the way he liked it.
Yeah, more.
And yeah, so these ideas started to come out, and was in the the writings that I'm aware of are from the early 1970s. Just almost as old as I am.
God, yeah, that's.
But the idea was to, a new form of almost punk magic. There was, from my understanding, there was a great deal of crossover between the chaos magic and punk communities early on.
Oh, that's great. I always thought it was going to be the goth thing, but I suppose but now you mention it, you're right. A sort of punk community is 1977, and the world is going mad, as they say.
Yeah,
so it's that sort of start of it, really.
Yeah, you had a lot of sorcerers living in squats.
Yeah, the old sort of type of music as well. Before that was kind of like high magic, the sort of Yes and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it all gets swept away, and people go to this kind of more folksy, basic thing.
Yeah, from prog to punk.
From prog to punk. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. As I say, in the book, about half of the book goes through basically this information as I look at it, the kind of way it's evolved, but with your own quite unique spin on it, I think, about the informational age, but also how different magicians have reacted to that. And the second half is your techniques, or presumably not all of them, but quite a lot of quite interesting and useful techniques there, and about how to cast spells from this perspective. Do you want to say a little bit more? I mean, I was very struck by, because there's this thing called sigils. You better mention that first, because your sigils are quite amazing, But start us off and tell us what a sigil is, and that's an Austin Spare thing, I think. Is that right?
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways of putting them together. I use the Austin Spare technique, where you write out a statement of intent. His example was, "It is my will to gain the strength of a tiger." That was in one of his books, and you write it out. You strike the repeated letters. Spare removed the vowels as well. I also do. Some people leave the vowels in, and then you take the remaining letters and you turn them into some sort of symbol. Mm-hmm. And the idea is you will create a symbol from those letters that conceptualizes the idea that this symbol means this statement. And statements of intent can be difficult to write. The people, a lot of times will write them as "I shall do this" or "this shall come to pass." That's a little nebulous. I like writing them as either something is happening right now or something has already happened when I do my statements of intent. So you create this symbol, and that is your sigil. And there are different ways of empowering that sigil. Some people burn them. Some people keep them forever. Some people try to fire and forget them using various techniques, inhibitory or excitatory techniques, sex, drumming, dancing, spinning, chanting, meditating. There's all different ways. Spare used something he called the death posture, which was essentially a technique of self-asphyxiation, briefly, to achieve a nebulous state of consciousness. The idea is to allow the intent that is encapsulated in that sigil to pass from conscious mind to subconscious mind, which is where many of us believe the magic happens.
Yeah.
The idea that I think that Pete Carroll first coined the idea of the psychic sensor by name. I can't be sure of that, but that's where I first encountered it. And the idea is that there is this sort of blocker system that sits in our consciousness that doesn't believe in magic. It is a hard realist. None of this could possibly be real. There's obviously something wrong with you. You believe in magic. You've got to distract that layer to get through it. And sigilization is one of the ways of doing that. And I started working with sigils very early on. Before that was one of the first techniques that I used. There's a phenomenal essay called "Sigils, Servitors, and God Forms" by Magick. He was one of the early chaos magicians that did a lot of writing on the internet. He's since passed, but that's one of the things that I constantly recommend to people. I at one point was asked to put together a reading list. I had a friend who asked, okay, they'd worked with Wicca, they'd done a little bit of high magic work, they've done a lot of divination, and they're like, so tell me about sorcery, tell me about chaos magic. What do I read? What is my curriculum if I want to learn this stuff? So I put together that. I maintain it on my Spike Vision website, and Sigils, Servitors, and God Forms is one of the first things that I recommend to people to read, because it is such a good description of how you can start with a sigil. That sigil, if you work with it persistently rather than the fire and forget, you can continue to accumulate energy behind the sigil to the point where it becomes something more. The idea of egregores, sort of group forms where many people have contributed their energy and their intent, and then you end up with this entity that is a manifestation and a magnification of those efforts. And then the ultimate form is a God form, something that many people come to believe in, whether they have contributed to its creation or not. Then you have something that becomes essentially a synthetic God. But
yeah,
from that standpoint,
thinking, can I take you to the? Sorry to interrupt. This.
No.
So fascinating what you say. So the linking in your book, there are lots of very, very interesting sigils. Obviously, you have to start with the kind of Austin Spare thing, as that's the basic stuff, really. But you soon move on from that and take it in some, if I might say, some very interesting, unusual directions. So the linking sigil, is that constructed on the same principle as the Austin Spare one, or did that? How did that one come about? Is there a sentence there? There's something in that people wrote down at some point, or?
Well, there is a video on YouTube where Argel, who was the mage who created the linking sigil, he talks about its intent. I mean, if you look at it, it is an L and an S. So linking sigil is right there.
Wow, I didn't notice that. There you go. That's great. Yeah.
And Ellis has itself become an egregore, the first egregore of the DKMU. The way that Argel explains it, she emerged very much the same way that in Tron Legacy, the ISOs emerged from the grid. It was time, and the conditions were right, and so they, self-instantiated.
Yeah.
And I like that idea.
You're blowing my mind now. Well, look, some of the other ones are kind of. There's so many good sigils in here that I wouldn't. You've got all these ones from electronics as well, which who'd have thought of that? The capacitor and the ground and the rectifier. That's legitimate. You think they are magical things.
Well, yeah, they are symbols. They are symbols that carry weight of meaning. They are a defined known thing. And any electrician or physicist can look at a symbol for a resistor or a capacitor and know what those are. And that's kind of the process of appropriation from reality. You can build a ward out of rectifiers that invert negativity that is sent your way, turn it into positive, useful energy that you can then accumulate or wield or send back, depending on your desires. I love co-opting symbols out of the mundane world for magical purposes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's say I'm flicking through the book now. There's for a deceptively small book. It isn't actually that small. There's packs an awful lot of material in this book that's quite fascinating, especially if you're interested in. Well, I think if you're just interested in magic in general and symbolism, especially, you've got some great examples there. So that's Phenomenal Sorcery. Is there? You blow my mind, so I probably have to really absorb this now. But I think the listeners are going to be really, really interested in this. I don't know. Have you got any to finish off? Have you got anything? Because I'm very obsessed with ancient Egypt and stuff. Do you have any connection with that or anything? Have you ever worked in that area at all?
I have read the magical papyri.
Really
fascinating.
Because there's loads of sigils in there, isn't there? Can you think about it?
Yeah. I enjoy going back and reading the oldest magic I can find. I love reading of Babylonian magic, Assyrian magic, Egyptian magic. Magic was more a part of the everyday life of the average person back then. Through the lens of religion.
Yeah.
Casting a curse, breaking a curse, love potions. These were, stock and trade.
These are what concern people. I've learned that to do with Chinese magic as well. That they're not the great masters. They deal with things that really matter to people. All right, gnosis and the afterlife matter, but then there's living. There's the things you have to do in the course of living. These are important things, or maybe more important to sort of sort your problems out and live a good life and all the rest.
Yeah, I mean the Icelandic magic from the Middle Ages. There's we fortunately have a lot of those grimoires. There is a museum of sorcery and witchcraft in Iceland. And they run a publishing house as well, and so they have put out a lot of facsimile copies of the old grimoires. The Galdrabach, the Galdraveker. There's just so it's so interesting to look at. It's like how to stop someone from stealing your sheep. How to know if someone is wooing your wife. It's just all of these the things to help. Aspects of daily life.
Yeah.
And, living now in the information age, I think that, the work that I'm trying to do really does the same. It's like how to make life easier, how to make the things break your way.
Yeah. This is great. Okay, look, we better. Can you want to tell us what's the next project? What are you going to do next?
That's a
write
great question. Yeah, I always write my ideas down. I've got a big OneDrive, a big collection of Google Docs, a lot of notebooks. And sometimes I'll just take a moment to go through and say, okay, are there any ideas that I want to put out there that I haven't? A lot of times I'll put something into an essay that I'll put on spikevision.org, which is my blog.
Yeah.
And sometimes those essays turn into larger projects.
Yeah,
that's what happened with Quantum Sorcery. I was going through posts from the Tribe of the Fifth Aeon on chaosmagic.com. A lot of those are archived on the Wayback Machine online.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to for my, one of the appendices in Phenomenal Sorcery is a history of organizations that have worked with information magic.
Yeah, fascinating.
And a lot of those are gone now.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was able to reach out to some of those former members who were happy to talk about them. I was, some of them, some of the folks that were in the Z cluster are in the DKMU now, so I was able to talk with them directly. I was very excited to be able to talk directly with Tony Widmo, who wrote Chaos Hex, which is an application for doing magic on the PC. So there's still a lot of folks out there from that original push. I mean, I kind of think of myself as like a third gen chaos magician.
Blessed are the third generation.
Well, I certainly hope so.
You've done a great job.
Well, thank you.
It's a fascinating book in so many ways, and really great to talk to you. And if you've got a final word you want to offer our listeners before you go. You don't have a catchphrase, do you?
I don't. I don't have a catchphrase.
Do what I will, shall be the full
do your research and don't be afraid.
All right. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for talking to us. And love is the law, love and the will.
Awesome. Thank you.